to the third Distinguished Speaker Series of the year. Thanks again to the National Veterans Center and John Kamen for hosting us here. I really appreciate what you guys are doing. And tonight, we have a very special presentation for a couple of reasons. First, I'm going to introduce my boss, the director of the Graduate School of Political Management, former Congressman Mark Kennedy. Some of you all may have watched a recently broadcast TV show called Alpha House about 4 Republican senators living together in a townhouse on Capitol Hill. And I'm pretty sure the inspiration for that was the 2 of these men, Congressman Kennedy, Congressman Shimkus, and 2 others who lived together on a townhouse in Capitol Hill when they were all Republican members of Congress. The show's terrific, but I'm hoping to hear more about what it actually was like. And sir, if you could give us some good stories and good anecdotes about what Mark was like, we'd really appreciate that. I'm sure he would too, sir.
Thank you, Seth. Let's first of all, other than that Alpha House comment, Seth is doing a wonderful job of running this second service program. Let's give Seth and Dara a wonderful applause. We appreciate their excellent work. We appreciate the wonderful results of this program. And I always tell folks, the first presidential race we've had since well before World War II, where we didn't have either the Republican or the Democrat president or vice president candidate being a veteran, is a grave concern to us. So we appreciate your interest in considering second service. Alpha House was nothing like us. We always behaved ourselves. The most controversial thing that happened is we had one incident where nobody could determine who ate the cold pizza. Nobody would live up to it. We finally figured that it must have been the cleaning lady that took it. But the room was always clean, always well behaved, but it was always a lot of fun to get together after a tough vote. Or sometimes, those votes are 3, 4, 5 in the morning. The good news is the House was close enough that you could get an hour's worth of rest, hop in the car with 4 members of Congress and quick question the vote at 5 o'clock in the morning to pass something or another. I'll just say one note about my family, and then I'm going to tell you about John, because my son is actually doing his final qualifications aboard the Reagan today, tomorrow, and Friday. So I'm hoping to have good news, and if I get really good news, we'll see that he gets assigned to the George Washington so that we can make sure we have the founder of our country covered from sea to shore. Let me tell you 5 things about John Shimkus you might not know. You probably do know that this is a guy that faith and family makes a lot of difference to, and I very much appreciate it about that. He was saying that he met his wife on base. He's got 3 great boys that I got a chance to grow up with, having been his roommate for 5 years. But part of that, he's also a good businessman, because he got me to pay him rent for 5 years.
Hard to do.
But I paid every time, and when we left, we had a very collegial relationship. If they were gone for a break, the whole family would take over all 4 congressmen's rooms. But we left our bunk beds for those boys because we figured we didn't have any use of them in Minnesota, so they're probably all outgrown that. The other things you need to know about him, he's a mean pitcher. Republicans were undefeated my 6 years in Congress at the congressional baseball game. It was largely because the Democrats were led by Martin Sable from my home state, and they believed in the seniority system even when it came to the baseball game. And John was a pitcher that pitched exciting games and put us into victory. The other thing that you know about him is he's a veteran, or he wanted to be here. A West Point grad. I always say it's always good when you're a kid from the country worried about the safety of a big city neighborhood to have a ranger as your roommate. 5 years of active duty, retired as a lieutenant colonel. But he also was a teacher and then went on to public service, and he's going to tell you a little bit about that journey. But John today is chairman of the Energy and Economy Committee, subcommittee of the House Energy and Commerce Committee, which is one of the 2 most powerful committees in the House. He's got a very responsible position, doing wonderful things for our country, but we're very pleased that he's taking time out of his very busy schedule to come here and share his story of how he made the transition from veteran to congressman and we hope that he will inspire and give you good advice so that you too can do the same. Please welcome Congressman John Shimkus.
Thanks, Mark, and it's a great crowd. Thanks for coming. Beautiful facility, great windows. I come down here once a year. We have a member lobbyist basketball game. Is it the Smith Center? Is that the basketball? So we play at the Smith Center every year. I think the game this year is in September, usually, and we beat the lobbyists the last couple of years. Some will say they throw the game for us, but I think it's been legitimate. We have John Thune, a great basketball player from South Dakota, and former Senator Brown, who's no longer can play because he's no longer a senator. He was a legitimate basketball player. So I'm down on campus at least once a year. It's beautiful, and envious of the opportunities you all have to get a great education here. I won't tell anyone about your bunny slippers, Mark. But, I mean, leadership in the House is always different in schedules. We're pretty well have a great schedule now where we end votes around 6 or 7, and then we go do our dinners, and then we go home. But when Mark served, we could be there casting votes at 10, and then another set of votes at 2. And if they're very contentious, it was always therapeutic to sit around with an adult beverage of your choice and just kind of, wind down after a full day of talking public policy, or some of our colleagues or roommates may have been on the floor debating it. So it was healthy, and then you got some different perspectives. We're all Republicans, so it wasn't, terribly different perspective, but you do have, from Minneapolis and Houston, Texas, and me from the Southern Illinois. And we had probably at that time, Sullivan from Oklahoma was there, or Gresham Barrett from South Carolina. And you do run in crowds. So I think even sharing the different committees and what they're going on was helpful. And so I appreciate it. It's worked out well, and we still have the townhouse. I still have 3 other roommates. So it is a risk when you're a poor boy from Southern Illinois, because property values are pretty high here. And but I took it like a business. I raised the capital, I assumed the risk. And right now, I've been doing okay. If the wharf gets developed like they plan, I'm in like Flint. Boy, it would have been a good decision. If it falls through, I may break even. So let me just briefly, and I'd rather get to questions as soon as possible. And I'm a politician, so I will ramble. So go like this and wrap it up. To make a long story short, I live in my hometown of Collinsville, Illinois. It's 15 minutes from St. Louis, Missouri. I can see the arch from my house. Southern Illinois is ideologically conservative, although in some portions a strong Democrat presence. But they're conservative Democrats. So after serving, getting my commission, doing all the basic courses for the officers, we go to basic course even though you get commissioned. It was important for me as an infantry officer to go to airborne school. It was important for me to go to ranger school. I don't talk about that very much, but with veterans, you guys would understand. And I'm very glad I did it. Served 3 years in the old West Germany on the Czech border, a town called Bamberg. I just visited, took my family back there about 2 years ago. There's a jump brigade there from Vincenza that's stationed there. It's a lot different because we had real ammo, we had real equipment, we would go to the border, we would exercise, we would have alerts. So, but it was great to go back. 3 years there, loved my time. Actually, what's really bizarre is, as an Army officer, I was able to travel into East Berlin in uniform through Checkpoint Charlie, because when you were in Berlin, you were allies under the World War II treaty. It's not now to go back to Berlin now. For those of us who served in that era, it's still unbelievable. You just can't, you pinch yourself believing, who would ever thought the world would change so much? And so I left, got my advanced course. Next duty station was Forward, California. It's now a base that's closed, a post, Army post, not a base. It was with the 7th Infantry Division Light. It was there when I started to decide, do I want to take the next 2 years to try to get a company command, or was it time to go pursue a second career, a second service? I was called to, in my heart, and I'm a Christian by faith, so to teaching. I thought I'd stay in Southern California and know a little bit of Espanol, and I thought I'll pick that up, Hispanic growth, I'll have a job. But different plans. I got called by a small Lutheran high school in my hometown area. Said, well, hey, we're here, you're going back to school to become a teacher. We need a teacher. I had just got out of the military. I said, well, you got to talk to the head of the department. They arranged it somehow. Because it's private education, so you can really do a lot. You know, there's not a lot of rules you have to obey when you're in the private sector. And so I was there in the fall to teach. Started teaching high school government history. And in that teaching experience, I encouraged my kids, and the school assignment was, let's get the agendas of the next meeting, whether it was a city meeting, city council meeting, whether it was a township. In Illinois, we have township governments. It's a real low level of government, local government, or a county board. Get their agenda, see what's on the agenda, call your rep, and ask him a question. See if he knows what you're talking about. Most time, they had no idea what was coming up. And really, you learn that that's okay, because if they have a committee system too at the county board, and they're on the finance committee, they may not know what's going to be, on the zoning commission, what's going to come up for the full vote. But I didn't know that either. I just realized that these guys don't know what they're doing. So that means if they don't know what they're doing, I could do that. So I got interested in running for the local level. I ran for county board and lost against a conservative Democrat, ran a local business. Turned out to be good friends. It wasn't nasty. It was just having a choice. And even though you're just offering a choice, sometimes it does get nasty, because we are basically lazy people. We would rather not have competition. Competition is good. It makes everybody better. But I think corporations would rather not have competition. Schools would rather not have competition. Politicians would rather not have competition. But competition does make us better. So I ended up running for township trustee as a nonpartisan ballot. Got elected. And I ran for a countywide office. The county is about 250,000 people. I was the only Republican elected in that cycle. I kind of talked a little bit more about it. He didn't work. I worked hard. He was questionable in integrity. I was a former military officer. The local Democrats gave me a chance. And so hopefully I don't think I let them down, because they reelected me. And then I ran, Dick Durbin ran for the Senate. Paul Simon retired. That was Dick Durbin's congressional seat. I ran for the House against a conservative Democrat, won by 1,200 votes. That was 50.03%, which is enough to win, right? And I've been reelected ever since. Been drawn, redistricted twice. There's 102 counties in the state of Illinois. I represent 33 of them. So now it's really small town, really rural. Democrats control Illinois. I'm Republican. So they packed Republicans in districts to make more competitive seats for Democrats, which was very successful in the last cycle. So we lost 5 Republicans in that. Now, nationally, it happened the other way for Republicans. Republicans controlled most of the redistricting. And so nationally, I think we had a net plus. But in Illinois, we got wiped out. I've always been in public service. I've never really been in the private sector. The private Christian school, you could make an argument that that's the private sector. But it was teaching for low pay. And the second service issue is, how do you next serve your nation? Getting involved in government and public policy, it's like, I analogize it to sporting events. And was it, But either you could be the player on the field, or you could be the manager of the team, or you could buy a ticket, right, to be in the stadium. Those are all part of being part of that event. So politically, you could. Or there's people who don't like sports, so they're not even in the arena. And that's the unfortunate thing with our country, with the small percentage of participation, that not everybody's in the arena. Okay, so the question is how you can serve anyway. I've got great staffers. There's people who like to work behind the scenes. Joy's here from my office. Joy, where are you? So she works in my congressional office, so she got me here on time. So there's all different ways you can be involved, whether you're me, or whether you're encouraging someone, or you're helping fund some campaign. And I've had folks believe in me and give me the opportunity. I do, and I'll end on this. I'll take for questions because I can ramble the whole time. I do think there's an issue about ideology. Right? There's liberals and conservatives. And most conservatives are Republicans. Most liberals are Democrats. And that's okay. It's just how you view the role of government. The challenge is if you're... See, my area of the state of Illinois used to be democratically controlled. But they were conservative Democrats. So it was easy for a Republican who kind of broke in to hold it. So you can do that, again, for moderate Republicans who may win a Democrat seat, but they have to stay moderate. And when the parties try to pull them away from their base, they end up having lots of competitive races and a very difficult time. I'm a conservative in a conservative district, and a lot of those have been Democrats who support me, and it's been a joy. You don't get rich. I get paid a lot more than my constituents do. And that's enough for me to keep working hard. And sometimes when we walk to the midnight votes, so we drive up, you get out of the car, you're going to walk into the Capitol, the light of the dome is on, and you really got to look at yourself. And we've said it numerous times as roommates, when you stop pinching yourself, that you have the really great opportunity that's your place of work, then if you stop pinching yourself, it's time to leave. So 17 years, I still pinch myself. It's been a joy. Not always, because I've got my scars and bruises. And I think everyone who's run politically did it. We do have them. The question is, are they visible? Or, are they covered up by your clothes? So I've had both. But I've survived them all so far, and I wouldn't change a thing. So with that, I'll open it up for questions. And hit me with them quick, because you guys are on a short time, and now's the time.
Go ahead.
So how important was it that you started at a lower level? Do you think that's when you have to start, or do you think that you could jump in at a higher level?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And I met with a few folks earlier, and we talked about this because, Mark and I are the two different venues. Mark was able to do it, boom. For me, and I think it depends on your world experience and your district and your comfort. And for me, I think Type A individuals who want to serve can understand you can take this hill, right? Sometimes we're pretty naive about the obstacles ahead of us. Like, God, if we're just a good person, we're going to work hard, we can win this race. Well, not always. So, my advice, and I got the same advice because I thought I was the same way. And a guy talked to me, and I kind of told him, this is what I want to do. And they said, let's go out and get a pizza. And he looked at me, and I'm from a Democratic area. They said, you do this? This is probably not politically correct, but I'm a conservative Republican, so I'm not always political. He said, they will cut up your body and spread your body parts all over this district, and you'll never be found again. You have no chance at this level. So look at this race. And we don't think you have a chance there. That was really the kicker. You don't even have a chance here in this county. But if there was ever an opportunity, start here and see what happens. So I advise that a lot. But some people are pretty bullheaded. They won't take that advice, and they will go. And you see it every year, where people don't start at a level that is kind of doable. Now, the thing about money in politics is that if you come from wealth, you can buy a lot of name ID pretty quick. But if you don't, then you've got to do the sweat equity and work and establish yourself and establish a record. When I got elected to county treasurer, that's tax collector. Man, I was a great tax collector, right? So I billed on time, I received on time, I distributed the tax revenue on time, and I didn't lose. I hand managed the portfolio of the county, and I didn't lose any money. And I lowered my staff. It was easy because the guy was still doing hand ledgering of accounting. And they were still receiving the mail instead of doing a lockbox through the local bank. I mean, it was just really kind of simple things that I could do to have higher quality, lower cost. That gave me an argument to say I can take that to Washington. Now, you could question how successful I've been here with how we have operated over 17 years. And it's kind of funny because I do say, some people ask me, I have a new district, 40% is new. So even though you could represent a county, Mark, you would know this, you get drawn into a new county, it's like those people have no idea who you are, even though you've served the next door. I got a county, Shelby County, represented for 10 years. And the redistricting gave me Moultrie County, which is just north. It's like I was from another planet. Like, they had no idea who I was. But that's the benefit is, when you're running the first time, you can only make, this is how I am. This is how I believe I am. This is how I'm going to vote. Once you have a record, you can say, this is how I am. This is how I'm going to vote. And here's my record. And if there's something liberating about that. And so if people don't like my record, well, don't vote for me. And I think if you can go back to, actually when I first ran the laws, until 92, the same kind of positions and policies that I espoused then are the same ones I mostly espouse now. I just know more stuff about nuclear waste and the Superfund, all this stuff that no one's going to talk about in a public policy debate. It's always going to be the main issues of debt and spending and taxes and maybe foreign affairs as far as 2 wars and stuff like that. So I rambled, but thanks for the question. Yes, sir.
Congressman Seth Johnston, fellow West Point grad, thanks very much for sharing your time with us this evening. I wanted to ask you about partisanship. You mentioned a couple of times that you are a conservative Republican. I wanted to ask, as a veteran as well, do you feel like there's something about your background in uniform or as a service member that has allowed you to cut across the aisle at all? Is there something about national service that can be of value to politics nationally in breaking down the kind of barriers that people often say come up with those lines that are drawn between the two sides?
A good question. I think we fight because we have different views of how government should operate, how best our individual citizens can achieve the American dream. One side, I think, believes it needs a lot of government help. Another side says, no, man, free them up, let them go. They can do it. Give them freedom of choice and opportunity. I got a lot of friends across the aisle. I think members will always say that. What C-SPAN does, it always highlights who's going to talk. The people who like the bill or don't like the bill. So what are you going to hear? You're going to hear people who like something and dislike something. You won't hear the story about the prescription drug user fee that we passed last year on a voice vote. You won't hear of a bill we just passed this week on a voice vote called Track and Trace, which is trying to get the pharmaceutical manufacturers to be able to trace back to the retail location the drug. And these are big deals. But they got worked out through the debate. In the Energy and Commerce Committee, a lot of things we break down are regional. So telecom issues really are more regional. It might be big city versus rural telecom, or broadband access versus no broadband access. So I got a coal ash bill. We did opening statements today. Coal country's going to support it, whether you're Republican or Democrat. Big cities that use electricity but think they don't, it's just coming out of a plug, probably aren't going to support it. But they're really a bipartisan. I mean, there are pundits. This is how I talk about this partisanship issue. Bob Michael, great leader. Bob's just celebrated his 90th birthday. A loved ranking member for all the years he served. He's from Peoria, Illinois. So, and maybe I'm taking too much liberties, but when you don't have a chance to really affect the public policy debate, you have to settle for the crumbs that fall from the master's table, right? So what's happened after 94? After 94, these margins have been closed. In fact, we're sitting right now in the second largest Republican majority in 50 years, right now. The number one largest majority was last Congress. So I don't think anyone's pulled away since 94 to have such a big majority that you just kind of surrender if you're the minority party and say, okay, how can we get the crumbs from the master's table? Let's be part of this. Now we're these are ideological fights, and until you have large majorities on one side or the other, that's how I explain it. I think it's a Pollyannish view. I talk about it. Everybody see the movie Lincoln? Come on, you have to. It's tremendous. And it's instructional. What did Lincoln, I'm from Illinois. Lincoln's like, he's like there on the all-time leaderboard. But what did it do? What did it show? Lincoln had to personally get involved in public policy and lobby on the issue. That's instructive to a president. Lincoln bribed some members of Congress to get their vote. Now, this is from an Illinois who's saying, all right? And Thaddeus Stevens had to cool down his rhetoric to get the end, which was a passage of the Emancipation Proclamation and the amendment, right? If he had gone full tilt to what he believed. I love that part of the movie where he's holding that cane. You know what that cane's known for? That's when he almost killed someone on the House floor on a dispute. So they go to the history of the country, and there's a big fight. The other guy picked up a poker from the fireplace, and they're bashing away at each other. So, we're the House of Representatives. We're supposed to be. The cooling pod is supposed to be who? The Senate. They're supposed to be the adult leadership. We're not. And people shouldn't really expect us to be it. And why? Because we're elected every 2 years. We are always on the campaign trail. We are always talking to our constituents. Because if we're not there very long. It's the greatness of our country. Yes, sir.
Congressman Matt Field is my name. Thanks for being here. Thanks for your talk thus far. I was very interested to see and hear how you essentially marked the Congress as being either conservative or liberal. And you suggest that whether one's conservative or liberal is in essence determined by what government's role is in helping someone achieve or allowing people to achieve the American dream. So what I ask you to suggest is, how do you define the American dream? What do you think the American dream is?
Freedom.
So it's not responsibility, it's just freedom.
Individual freedom.
Thank you.
And liberty. I can't say too much more. That's my answer. Now, I just finished the book Atlas Shrugged, so I might be a little biased in this debate. So, all right, let me he's standing. Go ahead and stand, then I'll go back there.
Okay, Congressman Brian Mayer, thank you. service, and my question, you've made allusion to money, whether it's a local race or something between to the House. Talk to us about your perspective on raising money, how it's done. What's the...
Yeah, no one likes it. No one likes it. But you'll hear politicians on both sides saying if you're going to get on the field, you got to have the equipment, you got to have the helmet, you got to have the... So raising money is very difficult. Well, I do liken it to... I don't really claim myself as a businessman. Like I said, I always said I was in public service. Now, taking the risk on the townhouse, you can make an argument that I have a small business on the side that makes sure that my rent is low, and I'm also getting equity. So not too bad for a poor boy from Southern Illinois. But one of the best things I did was get my MBA so I could talk the language of business. So if you've got, if you want to do something in business and you've got a new gadget you want to create, or you've got a new service you want to do, you really got to, you got that idea, you got to put together a business plan, and you got to go to folks and say, hey, will you lend me money? This thing will work. I know it will work. So that's what you do on a campaign, whatever level. You say, I want to serve the country, I want to serve this constituency, I want to be an alderman, these are the values I bring, I'm from the local area, I can do this, and I'm going to be working 24/7 to try to meet the needs of filling this pothole or doing this. I just was at a, so then you've got to take that out to people who might be receptive to that argument, that they are so concerned about the city governance that they're looking for, alternatives. Now, if you're from the District of Columbia, a lot of times in Madison County, there are conservative businessmen going back to this whole issue, but you can't get elected as a Republican. So you're conservative, but you file as a Democrat. There's one party rule. So there's a lot of conservatives who are Democrats who are all over. So the issue is you don't call them names. You go, you lousy Democrat. No, they're conservative. I wouldn't get elected as I've talked earlier, so I don't know where I'm mixing and matching. But that's why I like to talk ideology more, because that's the value. So you don't want to say the word sell yourself, but you got to sell the product. What's the product? Well, the product is you. So what's your credentials? That's why second service and being a military veteran, I think is very helpful, because duty, honor, country, veterans. I was an Army infantryman, but I think everybody understands that when you, especially if you're a recent veteran, with the most recent campaigns, you could be an airman who drives a truck, who's running convoys in Iraq, which is probably the most dangerous profession to be in. So when you sign on the dotted line as a veteran, you know that you could be asked to give up your life. I was in Germany when the Grenada campaign. Of course, mothers, they're just freaking out. So even though I was in Germany, I knew I was going to get deployed to Grenada. I did write the letter and say, hey, I signed up for this. Don't sweat it. I'm willing to make the sacrifice, but I don't think it's going to happen. So those are the kind of people you want in service. That's the ones you want as the alderman, I think. I think you bring a lot of value. So you package that together, then you've got to really do the research. When I ran for county treasurer, and you've got to get good advice. There's earned media and paid media. Earned media is really the best because it gets you on, if you're from small town rural America, if it's a good enough issue, you get on the front page. You can never pay enough. Now the media is changing too, it shows you my age. You can never pay enough to get on the front page of the Washington Post. You can't buy an ad that puts you on the front page. Now you can. Sometimes they put those little stickies on, but that's not really in the newspaper. But if you got a good issue that you've researched, but then people say, oh, you got a negative campaign. Well, not if it's a great political issue and there's some government wrongdoing and you're trying to identify a difference between you and your opponent. The fact that he's got his kids on the payroll, you think that's an important issue? I think so. I'm sorry, I rambled. There was someone in the back, and we're running out of time, I know. What are you doing? Oh, you're sneaking up? I should hand an arm signal, so it's like, yes, sir.
Thank you,
With freedom? I think we're turning the corner. I think we're trying. I think there's concerns with the new tech age and the ability, personal freedom as far as whether it's medical records or whether it's personal information and database security. I'm in the high tech community, and I just think we've lost control.
Can I just ask, for example, the National Defense Authorization Act, what would be your thoughts on that?
It's a big bill. You'd have to be more specific.
Okay, I'll give it offline.
Okay. That's an easy out. So, but I mean, I'm not afraid to answer any questions. But National Defense Authorization is a big bill. There's a lot of provisions in there. Yes, ma'am.
Hi. So you transitioned from the military to Congress, which are two very different structurally how things are handled. So my question is, for those that are interested in making that transition, what has been your biggest frustration in Congress? And chairing the Energy Subcommittee on some days can be not a treat. And what has been your biggest similarity towards your experience in the military?
Let me tell you a similarity because it's really true. I've done a lot of different jobs, but I've never been closer to people than I was when I served in Germany as a single officer, because we would work long hours, we would be doing democracy and freedom work. We were willing to risk our lives in defense of the country. And then we were all together, so we would spend time having an adult beverage after a vote. So that's 24/7. I lived through September 11th. I was at the Pentagon on September 11th. I left right before the plane. Those are real life issues that you live through, and you get closer together like you would if you get deployed to the border because there's some drunk Czech soldier trying to climb over the fence, right? So that's the closeness. Real world issues, real time threats. Members of Congress really, same thing, really sacrificing our lives. And Gabby Gifford's a friend. There's a risk when you're in the public arena. So that's the similarity. The challenge is, we're not the military, so, for the track and trace bill to pass, you really have to find consensus and work with people and get them on board to move a bill. A lot of people think you can move a bill, boom, and usually it's a 10-year time frame. 5 different Congresses to build the coalitions and the educational aspects. I think the frustrating thing is you could be talking about the same bill, and I could say it's Mom, apple pie, Chevrolet, the greatest thing to ever evolved, and then your ranking member could say, this is the biggest piece of you-know-what I've ever seen. I can't even believe you're going to bring this bill up for consideration. No, here, John Dingell, you're all reading about John Dingell, right? John Dingell is a senior member. He's going to, Lord willing, surpass Byrd in having served the longest as any in the history of our country. So we're doing the coal ash bill. I'm a coal mine guy, right? So we're saying all these good things. John is just saying, this is the worst. He wrote these laws. He wrote the Superfund law. Any little change is bad news, right? So he wrote this stuff, so he's really lecturing me and calling me all sorts of names. So when his time's over, I'm the chairman, and I said, on this historic week, I'm just pleased to know that I am probably the last Republican member before you cross over the threshold to be number one that you could berate and attack and make fun of. And I'm honored to be that person. So, and that's kind of the battle you have in respect for positions and the good nature. Mark will tell you, a lot of good ribbing. Call someone the name on the floor. You can't do it. You got to call the speaker. Mr. Speaker, it's really Mr. Kennedy who's really the dirtbag, not you, Mr. Speaker. So, and there's a parliamentary process to kind of cool down the temperature. But you'll see members go behind the brass rail and say, "Man, you really got me." And it's like that
Sport. I mean, it's for big issues. Again, but we're on two competing sides. You can disagree without this being disagreeable. I think when you get the stories of either side, the members going beyond a respectful position, that doesn't help anybody. But we're thick-skinned. Don't get in this game if you're a wimp. Just you can't. You have thick skin. You got to have strong convictions, and you got to be able to stand on it. And remember, who's your backup? Your district. The people who send you to Washington. If you lose your backup, you might as well go elsewhere. And sometimes that happens here. People forget, and they get so comfortable that they don't have to worry about their district, and they start voting in opposition to those values that originally were sent them to, and eventually it catches up with them and they lose. It may take a long time, but I've seen it more than not. We're over time. I'm going to be respectful. I can go until they call me back for host, but thank you all. Hang around for a while, and it's an honor to be here.